Hello, Aldo here. In this video, we are going to explore working with shaders within Maya. I am still using the same scene that I used previously to explore lights within Maya. So what I have here, I have this polygon plane that I labeled floor, and I have 5 different polygon spheres that I created. So I want to use these 5 different spheres and also the floor. We need to set up our scene. I need to apply a couple of different shaders onto these objects and also one to the floor. And we're going to use a light to render this out so we could see what the qualities of the different shaders are. We're going to go into Windows in the File menu. We're going to go into Rendering Editors and we're going to use the Hypershade. Now, this little icon right here, Hypershade, we went over it previously in a previous video. It's this little icon here as well. So rendering Hypershade. Within this window, we have our default settings right here. Don't worry, I have this extra light fog because one of my other lights have it. The Lambert, Particle, and Shadow Glow are some of the default shaders that are created. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to create them here. Within this window here, if I look under the Create, under Maya Surface, I want you to create what's called a blend shader. So we have blend 1. Let's go ahead and create another Lambert, so we'll have Lambert 2. Let's create a Fong and a Fong E, and also up on top, anisotropic. So we have these 5 different shaders that we just created. And let's go ahead and create an additional blend shader. So what I want you to do, let's go ahead and select our anisotropic shader. And over here on the far right hand side under color, I'm gonna go ahead and select a color. I'm gonna select I'll go ahead and select red for my colors for the different shaders, anisotropic, for blend, so that they're all going to be the same color. Not for blend 2, we're going to do something different with that one. Not for blend 1, I'm sorry, Lambert 1. This is the default shader, never change this one, leave it as the default. Lambert 2 is going to also be red. Fong, it too will be red, as Fong E as well. And now what I want to do, I want to move my window so I could see my scene. I'm going to apply these shaders onto these different spheres. So I'm going to do the drag and drop method. I'm going to move my cursor over this material. I'm going to click and hold down the middle mouse button, and I'm just going to go ahead and drag it, and I'm going to let go of the middle mouse button, and it applies it to that object. I'm going to do the same with the blend, the Lambert, my Fong, and Fong E. So I'm going to go ahead and select this sphere. I'm going to rename it. So this is my anisotropic. Anisotropic. We'll say sphere. This one is my blend. Yes, that's correct. So I'm just renaming them so that it makes it easier for me to select them. This one is my Lambert sphere. This one is my Fong. And lastly, I have a Fong E sphere. What I want to also do for Lambert 2, instead of applying a color, for this shader, let's go ahead and assign it to the floor. Now it's all already gray, but we can't really see it, but we're going to change this. Instead of having a color, let's go ahead and click on this little checker box. We're going to assign what's called a render node. A render node, let's go and click on it, is now going to allow us to put, I want to go ahead and select 2D texture, and I want to apply, in this case, the checker box or checker. And now when I look at my scene, I can't see the checker. I'm going to go ahead and press 6 on my keyboard. And now we have this checkerboard pattern as on the floor. This too has a blend material, and we'll check out what that looks like in a moment. So we created these different shaders. Again, we created an anisotropic, a blend 2 for the floor. We created a Lambert 2. Lambert 1 is a default shader. It's already there. It's created by default. Light Fog 1 was a shader that was created from my previous example, so if you do not have that one, don't worry. Particle Cloud is something that is here by default, and we created a Fong 1 and a Fong E. Shader Glow is also created by default. So now I can close this window. And what I need to do, I do not have a light in my scene. So let's go ahead and create a new light. I'm going to go into the Create menu. I'm going to go into Lights. I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead and create a spotlight. We'll go to the option box. These settings look good. I want it to cast shadows. Great. I'm going to go ahead and tell it to create. And if you recall previously, I mentioned we have a different tool that we could use. Instead of using the move tool, I'm going to press T, T for Tom, on my keyboard. This gives me the show manipulator tool. I now have two controls. Go ahead and now press 7 on your keyboard. I'm going to raise this up. So I could change the placement. We have two controls, the placement of the actual light and where it is aiming. So I'm going to go ahead and move this out to make a larger shape. And I'm going to go ahead and angle it just a bit. And what I want to do, let's go ahead and zoom in so that we could see our scene. And what I want to do, I'm going to go ahead and go into my render settings by clicking on this icon here. And for my render settings, I want to make sure that under render using Maya software is selected for this example. Under the Maya software tab, I want to make sure that my quality, it's not set to preview. I'm going to go ahead and tell it to select production quality. I'm going to scroll down. I want to make sure that ray tracing quality is turned on, which it is. And if I go ahead and render out this scene by clicking this button here, we're now going to be able to see some of the qualities of our shaders. Because we're using ray tracing, it gives us really the qualities that we're able to see. You can see on some of these they have reflections, some of them don't. I want to go ahead and turn on ray trace shadows for my spotlight so that I also could increase the look of this shadow here. So I'm going to close this window. I'm going to double click on my spotlight, and in the attribute editor over here, I'm going to go ahead and scroll down. I'm going to locate under shadows, and I do not want depth map shadows turned on. I want to go down to turn on use ray trace shadows. We could re-render the scene, and now we have nice crisp shadows. There are some settings that we could use to change how for example the light radius. Right now it's set to 1. A setting of 1 gives us this really hard light right here. That really, it's because it's really like pinpoint light. If we increase this to say 1 is just like how large it is, I'm going to go and tell it to a radius of 4. So it's making a larger light. Let's go ahead and re-render this. And you can see it's now getting a little bit larger. So as we increase this value, let's go ahead and change this to 15, for example, and re-render this. You see it gets bigger, but now it's getting really grainier. And let's go ahead and try to increase the shadow rays as well. We'll try 6. As we increase this, you can see how it's now creating a more, it's getting less grainier. But as you increase these shadow rays, let's go and say, for example, to 20. I said 20, not 19. Now notice a couple things. It's becoming more intensive. It's we have more calculations that we have to create, but you can see the shadow. It looks a little bit more realistic. Now if I drop this, well, let's go back down to around 4. And let's see, I'm going to go ahead and just select half of this and then re-render just this area here. So you can see how we don't need to have the light radius so high since I increased the shadow. So it is a matter of working with your different settings. But what I want to do right now, I want to talk about the different qualities that we have right here. So now we have this nice rendered image. Up here, this is the anisotropic shader. If you look closely, it is trying to mimic something similar to like the grooves that you'll see on a record or a CD. It has a diffused refraction. It's not so much reflective. If we look down here, this is a Lambert. A Lambert is a matte shader. So you don't have any spectral highlights. You do not have any reflections. And then what we have over here, up on top, this is my blend shader. This one does have reflections. You could see the reflections of the other spheres. And it does have a nice spectral highlight. And then these two shaders down here, this is Feng and Feng E. These were similar to the reflections that you might get on something that's highly reflective, like a car shader. So the E is economic, which means the calculations aren't as intensive. But nowadays, with our powerful computers, uh, both of these render out really fast, depending on the settings that you have. And also, if you notice closely, you could see a reflection on the surface of our checkerboard because it is a blend shader. So it too is reflecting. But it took us a while to get here. Our different shaders give us different materials, and by no means did we go through all the different type of shaders that are available depending on the use. Down here, you could select, for example, under Maya, they have specific for Maya surfaces. You could explore the different shaders that are available. There's also 2D textures that you could use, or a 3D texture. There's also Arnold, and in a future class session, we are going to explore the Arnold renderer. But for right now, I wanted to explore the Maya software renderer. In order to do this, we needed to explore lights first, because without lights, we don't have a scene. Then we applied our shaders so they could see what they look like. But it's not until we have our lights and we have our shaders, then we render that we get the final results of our scene. So we have something that looks like this. So I look forward to seeing what you are able to create with your different experimentations within Maya. Let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.